And ABC News political director Rick Klein joins me now for more on this. Rick, 10 Republicans voted to impeach the president yesterday. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, he wasn't one of them, but he was very critical of the president. And Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says he hasn't decided which way he'll vote in the Senate trial. What do you make of that, especially these responses from Republican leadership?
They're trying to straddle a divide in their party. 10 Republicans is either a huge number or a shockingly small number, depending on how you look at it. It might be both of those things, particularly when you consider that no president's ever had more than 5 members of his own party defect on an impeachment vote. So 10 is big, and it might have been bigger if members had felt like this was a more fulsome process. That's what many of them said. And I think Kevin McCarthy's comments were probably the most interesting of the bunch, because he did put blame directly on the president's shoulders, but then went on to say that he did not think that an impeachment was appropriate. There are a lot of Republicans who believe that, and that's what makes things interesting in the Senate, is that more information is going to come out.
Welcome, guys. Adam is here. So what just happened, guys? Trump is privately facing total collapse. His immunity claims destroyed, his lawyers arrested, and his most trusted allies now cooperating with prosecutors against him. And just when you think you've hit rock bottom, just when you believe nothing else could possibly go wrong, Congress drops a nuclear bomb on your doorstep. Multiple formal impeachment resolutions are now moving through the House of Representatives.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and still I rise to announce that last night I called for the impeachment of Donald John Trump, President of the United States of America, for threatening judges and for calling for the execution of members of Congress. If ever there was a person who ought to be impeached, as Donald John Trump. Now, there are many people who don't want to see this happen. They don't want to vote for impeachment. Well, there were people who didn't want to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge, but they marched on. I shall march on. I've been told that this vote will take place sometime after 1:30 today. I assure you I'll be here for that vote. I will also speak on Friday for about 1 hour after about 11 o'clock. I will explain more about it at that time. This president is a reckless, ruthless, lawless person who doesn't deserve the title of President of the United States of America. I yield back.
This isn't political theater. This isn't opponents making noise to get on cable news. These are actual articles of impeachment with specific charges, specific evidence, and real momentum behind them. Representative Al Green is leading the charge, backed by a growing coalition of Democrats who smell blood in the water. And the charges they're bringing aren't about process violations or minor ethical concerns.
Because they have the power. We have but one power that we can use without the consent of the other side. That one power is the power to impeach. And we are in a countdown. We're in a countdown because whether the president likes it or not, whether I like it or not, the people of the country want to see him impeached. And whether he likes it or not, or whether I like it or not, or anybody else, he is going to be impeached before he leaves office again.
We're talking obstruction of justice, abuse of power, illegal military action, usurping congressional authority, and endangering democracy itself. This is the impeachment storm Trump has been dreading for years. And it's hitting right now, at the moment when he is at his absolute weakest. Let me take you inside exactly what is happening. The impeachment resolutions moving through Congress are comprehensive documents. They aren't symbolic gestures written to make a political point. They are detailed legal filings laying out multiple articles of impeachment with specific allegations and the evidence to back them up. These documents accuse Trump of high crimes and misdemeanors. That phrase from the Constitution, the one that has launched presidential impeachment proceedings before, is being invoked again with force. The specific charges include using military force without congressional approval, abusing his authority over tariffs and trade, threatening federal judges who rule against him, intimidating oversight committees trying to do their jobs, obstructing impeachment proceedings themselves, and engaging in a pattern of conduct that Congress describes as devolving American democracy into authoritarianism. Read that last part again. Devolving American democracy into authoritarianism. That's not a cable news, Kyron. That's not a protest sign. That's the formal language of Congress making a finding about the President of the United States. They aren't just saying Trump broke some laws, they're saying he has actively and systematically undermined democratic governance itself. Representative Al Green has been publicly vocal about what's coming. He's confirmed that new articles of impeachment are moving forward, and he's been brutally specific about the charges. Trump's illegal military action in Iran without congressional authorization. His attacks on oversight committees that are trying to investigate him. His threats against federal judges who rule against his policies. His intimidation of witnesses who might testify against him. These aren't abstract constitutional violations that only law professors care about. These are specific documented actions that Green and other impeachment supporters argue clearly meet the constitutional standard for high crimes and misdemeanors. They believe these actions are exactly what the founders had in mind when they created impeachment as a remedy for a president who has become a danger to the republic. The timing here is everything. This impeachment push is happening precisely when Trump is most vulnerable. Think about where things stand right now. He has lost major Supreme Court battles that stripped away the immunity defenses he was counting on. The court has questioned his authority to act unilaterally on trade and other issues, removing the legal cover he once had. His legal team is in complete chaos after courtroom arrests and walkouts that made him look weak and desperate. Key allies who once swore loyalty are now cooperating with prosecutors, providing damaging testimony about January 6th and other scandals that have haunted his presidency. Moderate Republicans are starting to distance themselves publicly, and public opinion has shifted dramatically, with polling now showing that a majority of Americans, including independents who once gave him the benefit of the doubt, favor serious congressional accountability measures. The specific charges in the impeachment articles are absolutely damning. Let me walk you through them one by one so you understand exactly what Congress is alleging. The first major article centers on abuse of power related to military action. The resolution specifically cites Trump's decision to order military strikes in Iran without seeking congressional approval. Now, presidents do have some latitude to respond to immediate threats without waiting for Congress to debate. Everyone understands that. But Trump's Iran strikes were not emergency responses to an imminent attack. They were calculated military actions that Congress argues required authorization under both the War Powers Resolution and the Constitution itself. By ordering these strikes unilaterally, Trump bypassed Congress's constitutional role in deciding when America goes to war. That's not bad judgment. That's a violation of the separation of powers that the founders deliberately designed to prevent exactly this kind of executive overreach. The impeachment resolution goes into detail about why this matters so much. It cites the constitutional framers' intent to prevent presidents from unilaterally taking the country into armed conflict. It references the War Powers Resolution, which was specifically designed to check presidential war-making authority after the disaster of Vietnam. And it argues that Trump's actions set a dangerous precedent that effectively nullifies congressional war powers entirely. If a president can launch military strikes whenever he wants without congressional approval, then Congress's constitutional role becomes meaningless. That is the kind of executive overreach the founders designed impeachment to address. The second major article focuses on abuse of authority over tariffs and trade. This one ties directly to Supreme Court rulings that questioned Trump's sweeping use of executive power to impose tariffs on allies and adversaries alike. Congress is now taking those legal concerns and framing them as impeachable offenses. They're arguing that Trump has usurped congressional authority over taxation and trade by imposing tariffs unilaterally under dubious claims of emergency powers. The Constitution gives Congress the power to regulate commerce and impose taxes. That's not an accident. That was a deliberate choice by the founders to ensure that the power to tax, which is the power to reshape the economy, would rest with the legislative branch closest to the people. But Trump has essentially rewritten trade policy through executive action, bypassing the legislative process entirely. The impeachment resolution details how he has used legal tools intended for genuine emergencies to impose tariffs for political purposes. He's turned emergency powers into routine policy tools. He's done it without congressional approval or meaningful oversight. Congress argues this isn't just aggressive use of executive authority. It's a fundamental violation of constitutional boundaries. It's the president taking powers that don't belong to him and using them to reshape major areas of policy without democratic input. The third major article addresses obstruction of justice and obstruction of Congress. This is where all of Trump's attacks on oversight, defiance of subpoenas, and intimidation of witnesses come into play. The impeachment resolution catalogs a pattern of behavior designed to prevent Congress and other investigative bodies from holding Trump accountable. He has refused to comply with subpoenas. He has ordered subordinates not to testify. He has attacked witnesses publicly to intimidate them. He has criticized judges who rule against him. He has threatened oversight committees investigating his conduct. All of this, Congress argues, constitutes obstruction of the constitutional system of checks and balances. What makes this article particularly powerful is that it's not based on one incident that can be explained away. It's based on a documented pattern spanning years of Trump's presidency. Congress can point to specific subpoenas that were defied, specific witnesses who were threatened, specific judges who were attacked for doing their jobs, specific oversight committees whose work was obstructed. This isn't a he said, she said situation. There is a clear, documented record of Trump systematically trying to place himself beyond accountability. The fourth article, and perhaps the most serious in the long run, accuses Trump of endangering democracy itself. The language in the impeachment resolution is stark and deliberate. It describes Trump's actions as devolving American democracy into authoritarianism. That is not hyperbole. That is not partisan rhetoric. That is Congress making a formal finding that Trump's conduct threatens the fundamental democratic order of the United States. The resolution points to Trump's attempts to overturn election results, his role in the January 6th attack on the Capitol, his attacks on the press and judiciary, his undermining of democratic norms that have held for centuries, his pattern of authoritarian rhetoric and behavior that has escalated over time. This article is the most sweeping and the most controversial. It's essentially arguing that Trump's entire approach to governance is incompatible with democratic principles, that he has tried to concentrate power in the executive branch, undermine competing institutions, attack anyone who challenges him, and operate above the law. Critics will say this article is too broad, too political, too much of a judgment call rather than a specific charge. But supporters argue it's the most important article because it captures the totality of Trump's threat to democratic governance. One specific act might be explained away. A pattern spanning years cannot. Now let's talk about the evidence Congress is relying on to support these charges. For the military action article, they have Trump's own orders and public statements acknowledging he didn't seek congressional approval. They have testimony from military officials about the strike planning and execution. They have legal analyses from constitutional scholars about why the strikes required congressional authorization. It's a straightforward factual case that is genuinely hard to dispute. For the tariffs article, they have Supreme Court rulings questioning Trump's authority. They have documentation of how Trump has used emergency powers to impose tariffs. They have statements from Trump himself about why he imposed tariffs, many of which have nothing to do with actual emergencies or security threats. They have testimony from trade experts about how Trump's actions bypass normal congressional processes. Again, it's a well-documented factual record. For the obstruction articles, the evidence is overwhelming. Years of defied subpoenas, testimony from witnesses about intimidation attempts, Trump's own tweets and public statements attacking judges, investigators, and oversight committees, documentation of orders to subordinates not to cooperate with investigations. This is all public record. It's not disputed that Trump did these things. The question is whether they rise to the level of impeachable offenses. Congress is saying yes. The political dynamics around this impeachment push are volatile and fascinating. Democrats are energized. They see Trump weakened, his defenses crumbling, and an opportunity to finally hold him accountable for years of alleged misconduct. They're not just going after him for one specific act that might be hard to explain to the public. They're building a comprehensive case about a pattern of authoritarian behavior, constitutional violations, and abuse of power that spans his entire presidency and into his second term. This is their chance to make a statement about the limits of presidential power. Republicans, meanwhile, are in total disarray. Some are reflexively defending Trump, calling this a partisan witch hunt just like they did the last two times. But others are staying silent, and some are even quietly indicating they might be open to impeachment if the evidence is strong enough. Moderate Republicans, especially those in competitive districts, are calculating whether defending Trump is worth the political cost anymore. Traditional conservatives who care about constitutional principles are genuinely troubled by some of Trump's actions, particularly the military strikes without congressional approval and the usurpation of trade authority. These aren't culture war issues. These are fundamental questions about how the government operates. The key question everyone is asking is whether any Republicans will actually vote to impeach. Historically, presidential impeachments have been largely partisan affairs, but there are signs that some Republicans might be wavering this time. The Supreme Court defeats have made it harder to argue Trump did nothing wrong. The legal chaos with arrested lawyers and cooperating witnesses has made Trump look weak and possibly criminal. The specific charges resonate with traditional conservatives who care about limiting executive overreach. And moderate Republicans in swing districts are doing political math. Is it more dangerous to stick with Trump and risk alienating independent voters who've turned against him? Or is it more dangerous to vote for impeachment and risk Trump's base turning on them in primaries? Different Republicans are reaching different conclusions, and that's creating fractures within the GOP that could potentially lead to enough Republican votes to actually impeach Trump in the House. The Senate is a different calculation. Even if the House impeaches, conviction requires a two-thirds majority in the Senate. That means at least 17 Republicans would need to vote to convict, assuming all Democrats vote yes. That seems unlikely given current political alignments. But it's not impossible. If more evidence emerges from cooperating witnesses, if Trump's legal situation continues to deteriorate, if public pressure builds, some Republican senators might decide that conviction is the only way to save the party from being permanently associated with Trump's scandals. There are also procedural questions about timing and strategy. Does Congress move quickly to impeach while Trump is weakened and momentum is on their side? Or do they take time to build an even stronger case with more evidence from ongoing investigations? Do they focus on one or two strong articles, or include everything to paint a comprehensive picture of misconduct? These tactical decisions could affect whether impeachment succeeds and whether it has lasting political impact. The historical parallels are striking. This feels similar to Nixon's final days when the walls were closing in from multiple directions and impeachment became inevitable. But it's also different. Trump has been impeached before and survived. Political polarization is more extreme now than in Nixon's time. And Trump has shown a willingness to fight and attack institutions in ways that Nixon never did. We are in uncharted territory for American democracy. Why does this matter beyond just Trump? It's about defending constitutional principles of separation of powers. When presidents claim unilateral authority to make war or impose taxes without congressional approval, they're undermining the basic structure of American government. The founders divided powers among branches specifically to prevent tyranny. If presidents can bypass Congress and act like monarchs, the whole system breaks down. It's about accountability and the rule of law. Trump has spent years operating as if normal rules don't apply to him. Impeachment is one of the few mechanisms the Constitution provides for holding presidents accountable when they abuse their power. If that mechanism can't function because of partisan tribalism, then presidential accountability essentially doesn't exist. It's about setting precedent for future presidents. If Trump gets away with unilateral military action, abuse of trade authority, systematic obstruction, and authoritarian conduct, future presidents will know they can do the same. The precedent set now will define presidential power for generations. It's about public faith in democratic institutions. Many Americans have lost faith that the system can hold powerful people accountable. If Congress can successfully impeach Trump for serious constitutional violations, it might restore some of that faith. It might show that the system, while slow and imperfect, can still function when pushed. What comes next? The House will debate and vote on these articles of impeachment. If Democrats stick together and pick up even a handful of Republicans, the articles will pass. Trump will be impeached for a third time, which would be completely unprecedented in American history. Then the matter goes to the Senate for trial. That's where things get really interesting. Trump's response will be aggressive and chaotic. He'll attack Congress as partisan and illegitimate. He'll claim this is a coup or a witch hunt. He'll try to rally his base and turn impeachment into a political asset. But his ability to control the narrative is weakened. His attacks might not land the way they used to. Each new outburst might just remind people why he's being impeached in the first place. The implications for the Republican Party are profound. If they defend Trump through another impeachment, they tie themselves even more tightly to his scandals and potential crimes. If some break ranks and vote to impeach or convict, the party fractures even further. Either path is painful, and the party's decision will shape its identity for years to come. This impeachment effort is different from the previous two. Those were about specific incidents. This one is comprehensive. It's about a pattern of authoritarian conduct and constitutional violations spanning Trump's entire presidency. It's happening when Trump is uniquely vulnerable, and it's backed by mounting evidence from cooperating witnesses and ongoing investigations. That combination makes this potentially the most serious threat Trump has ever faced. Whether impeachment succeeds in removing Trump or not, it matters. It's a statement about limits, about accountability, about the rule of law, about what kind of presidency America will tolerate. These are fundamental questions about democratic governance, and how Congress answers them in this impeachment process will echo through American history. The founders designed impeachment as a remedy for presidents who abused their power and threatened the constitutional order. That's exactly what Congress is alleging Trump has done, multiple times, in multiple ways, with documented evidence. This is impeachment being used exactly as intended. We are watching a constitutional crisis play out in real time. The resolution will shape America's political future for generations. Stay tuned, because this impeachment storm is just beginning. Floor debates, committee hearings, witness testimony, Senate trial, it's all coming. The battle over Trump's presidency and American democracy itself is entering its climactic phase. And however it ends, it will be historic.